Hello and welcome to my channel, Latveria Library, where I talk about anything and everything comic book related. Now today's story is a very powerful and emotional journey. I've heard it compared to The Watchmen, although I don't think it's quite on that level, but it's still a very moving story with incredible characters that make you think. Even if it broke my heart a little, it's everything I love about comics. Now before we go any further, I have to say that this story covers some controversial views on religion, especially Christianity. If that may trigger you, then I would recommend switching off. But I also want everybody to know that I'm not here to judge anyone. I love everybody that watches my videos. I just want to talk about a really good story that I thoroughly enjoyed and wanted to share. Also, this video will contain spoilers. It would be hard to talk about without talking about the ending. Now that that's out the way, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. And let's get into Punk Rock Jesus. Punk Rock Jesus was created by Sean Murphy and ran for 6 issues, the first premiering in September 2012 and the last in January 2013. Although Murphy was already well known for his art, this was his first solo outing, having the idea in his head for many years before putting it to paper. The premise of the story revolves around an entertainment company that clones Jesus from DNA on the Shroud of Turin. The Jesus clone is raised on an island while his entire life is televised for the world's entertainment. The project was called J2. We see all of this mainly through the eyes of 3 characters: Chris, the clone of Jesus, Thomas, the terrorist turned bodyguard, and Dr. Sarah Epstein, head geneticist. I want to go through these characters to get to the root of the story and the consequences of the company's actions. I'm going to start with Thomas. His family was part of the Irish Republican Army, which was created to liberate Ireland from Great Britain. They were deemed terrorists by the rest of the world for their brutal, ruthless attacks. During an attack on Thomas's home, his mother was killed, and then he killed his own father with a shot to the chest by mistake. His uncle found him after the attack and took him in. Thomas was then trained to be the ultimate killing machine for the IRA, while his uncle drilled into him how the Irish Catholics were being oppressed by the Protestants, that they could care less about them, and that his father wanted him to be a soldier, and it's God's plan for him. But that was the furthest from the truth. One day, the IRA decided to blow up a police station filled with Protestant police officers, but out in front of the station was a school bus full of children. Thomas wanted to abort the mission, but his uncle told him, "It's too late. The bus is full of Protestant children anyway. They're just collateral damage." Thomas tries to save the children, but it was too late. The explosion goes off, killing at least 1 kid. Thomas was arrested, and the rest of the IRA got away. During his interrogation, the chief inspector tells him the true story about his mother and father. His father had made a deal to trade info and members of the IRA for protection. Thomas's parents were never part of the terrorist group. The chief inspector had a theory about who killed them, but not enough evidence. Thomas knew who did it though. While being transferred to his cell, he escapes and steals a vehicle. He heads to the bar where the IRA and his uncle hang out, and murders everybody in that bar. Thomas is taken back to custody and gives up everything he knew about the IRA for a lighter sentence. What he thought was his purpose, the reason he was put on this earth, was all just a lie. Thomas's uncle used his faith to manipulate him. He made him think he was a soldier for God. What was Thomas supposed to do now? His first night in jail, Mother Mary's spirit came to him and told him it was time for him to repent to help restore justice to the land, and the Lord will free him from these walls. But if he takes one more life, he will burn in hell. And as she was leaving, her final words were, "If you seek redemption, then you will know what to do." This led him to the J2 project. He fully believed that the clone baby was Jesus, and it was his mission to protect the baby and his mother. This was a mission from God, his way to redemption. But was he right? Now I want to go over the other side of the coin, Dr. Epstein. The doctor is an atheist who doesn't really care all that much about the cloning project, but she will do anything to get funding for her environmental experiments. She looks the other way when J2 does the more morally questionable things, even participating in some of them, like changing the embryo's eyes to blue because J2 wanted the baby to look more like an American version of Jesus, hoping that it would gain more views, or watching Chris's mother become more and more depressed from being locked up on the island for so long, while Slate, the leader of J2, makes it worse by giving her an unlimited amount of alcohol. Eventually, Dr. Epstein's complacency was one of the key components that led Chris's mother to a Christian terrorist group and eventually her death. We will get into that a little more later. Now, Sarah believes everything she's doing is for the greater good, that she will be able to save the world from global warming one day. Even though she does let a lot of bad things happen, I still really like this character for some reason. Maybe it's because of a scene close to the end. You see, Chris had a twin sister that only Slate and Sarah knew about. Slate said he would put the child in foster care, but Sarah followed him. She watched him inject the baby with enough sedative to kill an adult and throw her off a bridge. Sarah waits for him to pull off, and she rushes in to save the child. But she had no doubt the child was already dead. Somehow, though, she pulled through. It defied science and was nothing short of a miracle. She raised the girl as her daughter. She had always wanted one since she wasn't able to have kids of her own. This wavered her atheist beliefs a little. Sarah went public with everything close to the end of the book to finally take down J2, but faith can be a powerful thing. More on that later. Finally, I want to focus on Chris and the Christian cult, and then give my thoughts on what this comic means to me. From the moment it was announced, this project has caused nothing but suffering, all for the sake of entertainment. Multiple Christian terrorist groups have popped up all over the world wanting the clone of Jesus and his mother dead. They believe Chris's creation is blasphemy, and he's actually the Antichrist. Because of this, Chris has never left the island since he was born. Constantly on camera 24/7, his days mainly consisted of learning about the Bible and performing miracles that may or may not be fake. Because he's never known anything else, he was content for the most part. At least he had Dr. Epstein's daughter to play with. His mother was also stuck on the island as well. She didn't take it as well as he did. She was put through so much, again for the sake of this twisted reality show. She was forced to get multiple plastic surgeries, dye her hair blonde, and was put on an exercise routine to maintain her figure throughout her pregnancy. Plus the constant attacks from terrorist groups. It really took a toll on her. She was put on alcohol to cope, but this obviously made her look like a negligent, alcoholic mother. But this was Slate's plan. He wanted to make her look like the villain of the show. Drama always gets views. When Thomas finally found out, he at least tried to help. He snuck her out one night, but she's the most famous person in the world at this point, so she was recognized. and they were chased by one of the religious groups all through the city until they finally made it back to the island. But after getting a taste of freedom, she tries to escape multiple times over the years. Sometimes with Chris, sometimes alone, until she finally was able to by stealing Thomas's pistol. After her escape, she has a spiritual awakening, or it was just a dream, for lack of a better phrase, which leads her to NAC, the terrorist group that keeps attacking the island. They come up with a plan to kidnap Chris, but she's killed in the process. After this, Chris starts to blame religion for his mother's death, and wanted to learn more than just Bible verses. He started working out every day. Through this, he discovered punk rock because he needed something to work out to. Of course, the first punk record he ever listened to was Jesus Was a Terrorist by the Dead Kennedys. This is kind of foreshadowing for what comes later. He then begs Dr. Epstein to borrow books that aren't related to the Bible, and she hands him Darwin. She then starts to teach him history and science. This was definitely a culture shock for him. Imagine living your whole life isolated from the entire world, only learning stories from the Bible because you're told you're Jesus Christ. Then you actually start to learn about the real world and how it operates. This could drive the most sane person mad. And Chris was only 15. Maybe Thomas could have balanced him out if he wasn't fired from the project. He was always kind of a father figure to Chris. Chris then takes it to the extreme. He renounced religion and escapes J2 during his attendance at the Grammy Awards. And the first place he heads is to a punk show. He joins one of the bands playing that night called the Flak Jackets. Then Thomas, keeping his promise to keep Chris safe, had caught up to him. They go on tour together, all while building an atheist punk army. That's when the war with NAC began. All around the world, the punk army were getting in scuffs with NAC. But it wasn't all bad. The Flak Jackets won a Nobel Peace Prize, funny enough, for their science awareness campaign and a program they started to help the poor. There is actually a really ironic scene that made me chuckle. The leader of NAC is furious that Chris won a Nobel Peace Prize because he's the quote-unquote Antichrist. When the news anchor interviewing her says, "But Chris is helping the poor. Isn't that what Jesus of the Bible did?" It's such a great moment that shows the person leading this Christian movement couldn't care less about religion. She only cares about winning this war against the punk army. Things start to escalate more and more. The attacks on Chris more frequent, until NAC finally went too far. While on their way to a gig, NAC attacks their tour bus with Molotov cocktails, but luckily Thomas was able to stop them and run them off the road, and in the process saving the leader's life from the crash. She asked forgiveness from Chris, but I think this was the moment when Chris decided he wanted to wipe religion from the planet. In his mind, religion had made fat Christian housewives like this one into terrorists. Thomas basically tells him that his blind idealism is no better than hers, that he needs to make peace. But Chris had already made up his mind. New tour starts, hitting all the religious hotspots in the world, and the first one on the list is Jerusalem. An hour before the show, and religious terrorist groups from around the world have band together in Jerusalem. Jews, Muslims, and Christians working together, and they are out for blood. They will do anything to get Chris's head. The band and Thomas are relaxing on the bus when an explosion goes off next to it. They survive, but were disoriented, and during the chaos, one group was able to snatch up Chris. Thomas takes off after them, then corners them. At that moment, he thinks about the vision of Mother Mary, then thinks about Chris's mother and his promise. He has to make a decision, and he does. Thomas mows down all of them, breaking his promise not to kill again, but saving Chris's life, and at the same time, in his mind, solidifying his place in hell. But this wasn't the end. Chris's bandmate Rabbit later died of wounds inflicted from the explosion. They returned home to New York to bury her and find that J2 was burned to the ground, so all the evidence of Chris not being the clone of Jesus burned with it. But as I said before, Chris had a sister, and Epstein went public with it. After their interview at the news station, they were attacked by Knack. They head to a helicopter on top of the building, but it's shot down by Knack, killing Chris in the process, while Slate is arrested. He was the prime suspect in the burning of J2 and the murder of Chris's mom. Oh, and plus fraud. But he's able to argue that Chris really was the second coming of Jesus Christ. He was born from a virgin, performed miracles, and rebelled against social norms. He was divisive to believers and found many disciples and was killed for his preaching. This is a really great scene. It shows that Slate hadn't learned anything from the J2 project. He's still trying to use people's faith to manipulate. And it really fires it home when he's trying to pitch the same idea again the moment he walks out of the courthouse. But Thomas catches up to him and kills him. This also shows, in my opinion, that Thomas has lost his faith entirely. Earlier in the comic, he tried so hard to not kill again. And when he finally has to in Jerusalem, he breaks down. My interpretation of this comic is how the media and organized religion will exploit people's faith for monetary gain, getting more and more extreme until it gets to a boiling point, and the grifters move on to another way to exploit. I really don't think it's a bad thing to have faith, and I don't think this comic is saying that. But don't let anybody tell you how or what to believe. That's what I think Sean Murphy is trying to say here. Dr. Epstein's daughter kind of says it the best. I believe in a higher power, nothing understood by man-made religion. But I find comfort in some kind of God. This is the end of Punk Rock Jesus. This one was emotionally draining. Just trying to convey my emotions properly was hard, but worth it. Because I love this story, and I want to share it with everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.